Hi, welcome to a new episode in the Internet Surfer, hosting the most horror and creepiest stories from Reddit. Please don't forget to comment, like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy.
My paranormal experience as a hospital security guard.
About 9 months ago, I began working as a hospital security guard at a major hospital in my city. It's been the most exciting and enjoyable job I've ever had. I'm incredibly grateful for it, as I've made many new friends and accumulated countless stories to share. The saying, "If you love your job, you never work a day in your life," really rings true for me. I've had such a variety of experiences, from arresting trespassers to dealing with mental health patients and searching for missing individuals, the list goes on. But those stories are for another day. Today, I want to talk about something different, my experience with the paranormal. Before I started this job, I was already intrigued by the idea of paranormal activity in a major hospital. I mean, people pass away in hospitals every day, so you'd think it would be a hotspot for ghostly encounters, right? I wish I could say I've seen ghosts chasing me down the halls or bodies mysteriously moving on their own in the morgue, but honestly, nothing quite like that has happened. Still, I wouldn't be writing this if I had experienced nothing at all. To give you a better understanding of the hospital's layout, let me explain where security is stationed. There are 4 main buildings we cover. The first is the main hospital, which houses the emergency room and over 1,000 beds for both kids and adults. We typically have at least 8 guards handling calls in this building, with 1 guard stationed in the emergency room at all times since that's where most calls come from. It's worth noting that I'm in Canada, so anyone can come to the hospital for any reason, free of charge. The second building, located across the street, is an 8-story medical clinic that requires just 1 guard. This guard also has to patrol the adjacent old clinic building, which is now primarily used for treating children with eating disorders. This is where the story I'm about to share takes place. The last building is the cancer clinic, which requires 2 guards at all times and is the closest to the medical clinic if assistance is needed. When I first started the job and was shown around the various buildings, the old clinic, which we'll call the asbestos clinic due to its history of asbestos issues, immediately stood out to me. It's a building that, in my opinion, should have been demolished long ago. During my initial walkthrough, a fellow guard told me that this building was haunted by a young girl who took her own life on the 2nd floor. He also mentioned that the basement was haunted. The whole building used to be a tuberculosis sanatorium back in the 50s and 60s, with tunnels in the basement that were once used to transport bodies. About a month ago, it was my turn to work at the clinic during a night shift, and I was determined to experience some paranormal activity. I had done countless patrols of the asbestos clinic before, but nothing much had happened, aside from the elevators occasionally opening on their own, which was apparently normal. But that night, things changed. I had heard plenty of stories from other guards about strange occurrences in the clinic, but I had never experienced anything myself. I decided to do my patrol at 3 a.m., which is often said to be the prime time for paranormal activity. I began my patrol by walking around the exterior of the building, checking all the entrances to ensure they were locked. The building closes relatively early, around 8 p.m., so by then, it should be completely empty. However, I noticed that one of the exterior doors was slightly open. This concerned me because it had been closed during my first patrol. The building doesn't have any interior cameras, so when something like this happens at night, I have to check every unlocked room inside to make sure no one is inside. I entered the building and started my patrol of the first floor, checking every door and hallway. No one was there. As I approached the elevator to go up to the 2nd floor, I heard a faint creaking sound, like a door opening. I immediately radioed my team lead, informing her that I had found an open door and was hearing noises. I told her I was going to conduct a thorough patrol, and she sent one of the guards from the cancer clinic, whom we'll call Fred, to assist me. After searching the first floor again and finding nothing, Fred arrived. He told me he would start searching the third and fourth floors while I covered the second floor and basement. As I was searching the second floor, I heard the same creaking noise again, the sound of a door opening. I radioed Fred to come down, still not considering the possibility of anything paranormal. We've had incidents of homeless people breaking in to find a place to sleep, though it's rare for them to target the asbestos clinic since it's usually locked. We searched every room on the second floor but found nothing. After thoroughly checking the entire clinic, we concluded that no one was inside. Fred returned to the cancer clinic, and my team lead made a joke that it was probably just a ghost. That got me thinking this might be the perfect time to continue my ghost hunting. I went back into the building, determined to capture some activity. I sat down in a chair on the second floor, waiting to see if anything would happen. After about 10 minutes of nothing, I got bored and decided to head down to the basement. The basement is an eerie place, filled with tunnels that mostly lead to nowhere now. I decided to explore one of them since I had never done it before, and it seemed like the perfect time. Once I exited the elevator, I made my way to one of the locked doors leading to the longest tunnel. Most of the tunnels were completely blocked off, but this one stretched on. I unlocked the door and ventured down the tunnel, taking note of my radio beeping to indicate that it had lost signal, a common issue in basement areas. As I reached the end of the tunnel, my flashlight started to flicker. I decided to stand still and listen, and to my shock, I heard a blood-curdling female scream coming from the start of the tunnel. I nearly jumped out of my skin. I turned around, pointing my flickering flashlight back toward the entrance, and started running toward the scream. When I reached the entrance, I tried to radio my team lead, but my radio was still out of signal. I looked around the basement and noticed that one of the doors was open. This door was supposed to be locked, with only security having access to the keys. I looked inside the room, which I'll show a picture of, but no one was there. My heart was racing. I closed the door and headed back upstairs to get a radio signal. I was still unsure if what I experienced was paranormal. Once I was back on the main floor, I radioed my team lead to let her know what happened. She sent Fred back to help me investigate the source of the scream. When he arrived, we went back to the basement. I showed him the room that had been opened, and we both noticed a very distinct and strong smell, like that of a decomposing body. Having spent time in the hospital morgue, I was all too familiar with that smell. We searched the room but found nothing. Fred joked that the room might have been used for tuberculosis patients who didn't make it, but in truth, none of us were sure what that room had been used for. We determined that everything was fine, and I decided I had spent enough time in the asbestos clinic for one night. Ever since that experience, I've rushed through my patrols in the basement, as that smell still lingers every time I pass by that room. So, what do you think? Was this a paranormal experience, or something else? Should I investigate further? Let me know if you'd like to hear more of the stories I've collected during my time working in the hospital. I've worked for a hospital system for the last 6 years in IT. For 4 of those years, I was a field tech, level 2 support, and a field tech lead. We had to be at the hospital Monday through Friday and had a 24/7 on-call rotation on top of that. Even during the height of the pandemic when the rest of IT got to work from home, we were there. That last part is relevant, in my opinion. Even before the negative emotions, pain, death, and suffering that skyrocketed during COVID, the first hospital I worked at definitely had its fair share of resident spirits. It was one of the medium-sized hospitals in this hospital system. Like OP, I can't say that I got chased down by ghosts or anything crazy like what you would see in a movie, but the weirdness was definitely there. The freakiest thing was when we were helping convert the old ICU to the new cath lab. As soon as the nurse call vendor had the system installed there, we started getting phantom calls to the nurse's station. Mind you, there were no patients in these rooms yet and no staff working there. More than once, We had the project manager go running into a room to tell the techs installing the PCs to leave the call buttons alone, only to find no one working in that particular room. After it opened, things got even weirder. Of course, the phantom calls kept coming, but other things would happen that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. One example was when I was working in a room that had recently had a code blue happen. The patient didn't make it. Anyways, I was trying to work out why we couldn't get any PCs to connect to the network in this one room. The fluke said the port had a connection and was on the generic VLAN. The original PC was re-imaged several times, so obviously it had a perfectly working Ethernet card, and we even put a brand new PC in there, but I digress. While I was troubleshooting, the door suddenly slammed shut. They open inwards and I had it wide open, so you literally had to be in the room to shut the door, or grab it on the way out and pull it close. The room got instantly chilly, and the thing that made me nope out of there as quickly as possible was when I literally saw a depression form on the bed as if someone had sat on it. The nurses and patient techs at the nurses' station had a good laugh at my expense over that one. I came running out and just left my cart with all my tools on it and told them, I'm going to need someone to go get my stuff out of that room because I am not going back in by myself. I've had many other strange experiences at that hospital, and especially at the one I currently work at as a project manager, but this has already run longer than I thought it would. Happy to share if anyone is interested though. We had a small number of patients in each unit, due to them being psych patients, and they required remarkably close supervision 24/7. We also did rounds and charted the patients' locations every 15 minutes. That night, everyone was in bed, asleep. Just after doing rounds, I heard a loud crashing sound coming from down the hall. It repeated several times in a row. Imagine the old metal bed rails they used to have on hospital beds, and an extraordinarily strong patient shaking it and banging it against the metal heater, as if they were angry about being confined and trying to get the rail off. That was what it sounded like, except it was loud. I ran down there to check, knowing that it was an empty room but concerned that a patient had gotten in there and was in a rage for whatever reason. The room was empty, as were all the rooms around it, and every patient in that hall was asleep. I did call the unit above and below to see if they had been dealing with behaviors or heard anything, but they both said it had been quiet. Well, the next morning on my way out I ran into two other co-workers who told me they had both had paranormal experiences around the same time. One of them had actually even seen an apparition of a woman. So, yes. We didn't have experiences every night, but frequently, and that night they had been continually active for whatever reason.
Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, share and subscribe. The Internet Surfer on YouTube for more horror and scary stories.